People who stood up during speak now or forever hold your peace at a wedding. How did things turn out? Went to a wedding for some friends of mine. Beautiful bride and awesome groom were saying the vows. Unbeknownst to the family, the bride's ex-boyfriend snuck into the church all dressed up as a guest and blended in. Priest says his line, and the ex-boyfriend stands up and says I object. Some of the male family members escorted the guy out of the church by his feet and his back, and head dragging on the ground. Was pretty epic. I was singing at a wedding once, hired in. Did not know the couple at all, and when we got to this bit of the service, a dude said yes, I have something to say. The minister called him up to the front, and the couple, guy who spoke up, minister and best man went into the vestry. Everyone in the congregation was just dead silent. After about 5 minutes, the best man came out and said sorry everyone, it's off. Please feel free to go to the reception if you like. It's all paid for, but no wedding today. Obviously the congregation, who knew and presumably loved the couple, were really upset. If those are your pals, that's an awful thing, and you'd be worried about them. In the choir, however, we were loving the drama. We got paid, so we weren't too fussed about going home early. Still have no idea what the complainer said sadly, but we had fun speculating on the way home. My father has done many weddings and he says usually he'll ask the couple if they want it reworded so nobody says anything, but he said one time the couple said it was fine and nobody was gonna say anything. Cut to the wedding. My father asks the question, and one of the groomsmen steps forward, I think it was the groom's cousin, and goes into a big long speech about how they shouldn't get married without really explaining why he thought so other than don't get married. He finally finished, and my father said the groom looked like he was gonna murder the man and the bride just looked shocked. My father ended up asking them if they wanted to continue, and they both agreed. So they finished the ceremony. My father said the last time he saw the couple they signed the marriage certificate and neither seemed mad at each other, and he still has no clue why the guy objected other than he objected. During one of my sister's weddings my sister-in-law leaned over, and right when they said their vows whispered to me, I give it 6 months. Damn you cold, set a clock by it. Dead on. A cute one I saw. Pastor, speak now, or forever hold your peace. Little kid, maybe 6 years old. Stop. He then ran up to the groom, handed him a small jewelry box, and said, you forgot the ring. The kid wasn't loud, but you could hear a pin drop in the church. He ran back to his seat, and at his mother's prompting, he said, okay you can go on. Everyone just lost it laughing, and it was a couple of minutes before the pastor could continue. I was 3 years old. It was my mum's cousin's wedding. I was arguing with my older brother, would have been about 7, after he took my seat during the service, and I was very determined to get it back. During the silence as the vicar asks if anyone has any objections, a cry was heard from me. I was there first, so perfect timing on my part. I have no memory of it, but family still likes to tell the story. I already posted but a funny story from my marriage that just occurred to me. Shortly after the minister said his line, and Elle had just started back into the main speech, a baby absolutely wails. It was a 10-month-old of my maid of honor and her husband who was a groomsman, with her older sister being our flower girl. The wedding video is absolutely hilarious, because you can see my maid of honor trying to gesture towards her mother, who was watching the baby, to get her the F out. I lost it for a bit and full giggled. Made a joke quick about needing 2 flower girls, so she wouldn't feel left out. Then in the wee bit of quiet, while baby was being taken out, one of the groomsmen goes, well she can be the flower girl for you next time. I lost it. My husband was watching me in pure terror, and it was a mix of laughter and anger from the audience. Officiant managed to pull things back in, and we went on. It was kind of great, because we were both such goofy types, and ended up having a big show wedding from family pressure. One of my uncles was pure livid over the groomsman's comment. I knew him very well, and knew it was him trying to make light of something awkward without realizing what he'd implied, but all in all it was great. At my wedding I did not allow my grandmother to attend the ceremony. Everyone was like, oh she's 80, she's blind, she's got Parkinson's. What could she do? Object, faint, yell, IDK, but that lady is mean. She fainted at my high school graduation when they called my name, so I wouldn't put it past her. My biggest fear was she would stand up and object for no reason. I only let her attend at all for my mother's sake. She was sat in the reception hall in front of the bathrooms. So many people were so confused as to who the old lady was. She would whisper to anyone who dared to go to the restrooms. So many stories. I'm the grown mother and I object because of I'm the grown mother and I just love my grandson, note I'm the bride. It made the evening entertaining as it made for innocent gossip. We just told everyone she had dementia. She didn't at the time, just wanted the spotlight and no one took her seriously. I was the best man for my buddy and I loved to stick it to him. So while he and his new wife were getting their pictures taken between the ceremony and dinner, I handed out a bunch of keys and cheap rings I'd collected and gave everyone at least one, saying I'm going to ask for this back later. Please give it to me then. Then during my speech I said, now that my friend is married, anyone who had keys to his apartment, please give them back. And if he ever proposed to you, it's time to return your ring to him. He ended up with a pile of about 300 keys and rings. I was asked to leave, and she married him anyway. He cheated on her and gave her herpes. They are now divorced. He's in prison for assault with a deadly weapon and everyone still hates me for being right more than a decade later. Well, excuse me for being correct. A-holes, I hate humans. I didn't point, but should have. 23 years ago 2 friends were getting married, but she was a lesbian and I knew it, point like knew it, and the maid of honor was her girlfriend. I talked to her a month before the wedding, and she said it was fine, that the groom understood, and they had made their decision. But that was not true. From his perspective, he had a threesome with his fiancée and her friend and thought it was cool. He didn't get the memo that the 2 women were in love, and he was their cover. Anyhow, point I should have spoke up. He ended up losing his jank when he figured it out and hit her. She was no shrinking flower and hit him back. Both ended up being arrested and it almost ended their careers. I was at this wedding where a dodgy old homeless lady showed up and started yelling boo and yelling at the bride about betraying true love or something. She actually ended up dumping the groom for some pirate guy with a mustache. Crazy. My son did it. He was almost 2, and it worked out great. His grandma was marrying the guy she had an affair with, the registrar asked, and my son said oh no, really loudly. Everyone except his grandma found it hilarious. My brother-in-law turned and asked me if I'd coach the kid. None of us approved of the wedding. She tore her family apart because she cheated. My son's comedic genius is all anyone talks about when they talk about her wedding, and my now ex mother-in-law is still livid about him stealing her thunder 8 years on. The one and only time I went to a wedding, a girl standed up and objected and started saying he is not good enough for you, you know. The usual point. Turns out she was not there for the groom, she was there because she was in love with the bride. Point at one point she stood up and punched the groom in the face, grabbed the bride and they started to run away while everybody watched in disbelief. Point didn't get very far before being caught though. I wound up purposely marrying the wrong man. Because of this, the man I wanted to marry, my family couldn't stand. So I tried to find someone else. I did find someone else, and we set a date. I put our engagement announcement in the local paper hoping that my first and true love would see it and maybe stop the wedding. I had dreams of that happening. It didn't, and my first marriage only lasted 2 years. Eventually I wound up calling my true love to help me get out of my abusive marriage with my son. Of course he came straight away, halfway across the country to rescue us later. When I told him the story of putting the ad in the paper purposely, he said that his mother had seen the article and purposely kept the paper from him, not wanting him to cause trouble. We've been married for 22 years now. Our son is 25. So I had a thing going on with this guy, but he was getting married to this other girl, and when they said speak now or forever hold your peace, I thought, this is my last chance. So I stood up. My hands were shaking. Point everyone was looking at me all horrified, but I didn't give a I was just looking at him. I'm not the kind of girl who would normally barge in like that, but he was clearly marrying the wrong woman and we both knew it. So I asked him to run away and meet me at the back door of the church, and he was like, yeah, that's a good idea, let me just get out of this tux. He left his wife at the altar and sprinted away. Then we met up and he was like, I didn't say my vows, and I was like, oh woo, so you're not married. He also wasn't in his tux. He was just in his underwear cause he hadn't brought any other clothes. Anyway, he said he was glad I'd been around when they said speak now. I was at a wedding rehearsal earlier this year and the priest explained that if someone objects, even as a joke, he has to stop the ceremony and take the person somewhere private to discuss their objection with them. He also said that traditionally if the objector's objection is invalid they had to pay for the wedding. Oh, I can finally answer one of these. Kind of. I was the bride, not the objector. My husband and I had 3 wedding days actually. The day we were actually legally married, a small and inexpensive ceremony with just handfuls of family and friends. My favorite. Happiest I'd been up to that point. And a big ceremony. We didn't want it, but my dad and brothers had their hearts set and bribed us with the promise of paying for the ceremony/reception and a lavish gift in exchange for the stress of 2 introverts having an enormous wedding. My 3rd wedding, the big one, was ruined by an objection from the woman who's introduced us. A little backstory. When my husband and I met at my lifelong best friend's housewarming party, we hit it off right away and talked for hours. We literally left the party just to go and talk and enjoy each other's company better. When we returned, my friend immediately separated us and brought me up to her room, where she told me nervously, "You cannot sleep with him actually. Please never ever speak with him again." My stomach dropped and I expected the worst. Did he have a partner already? Was I flirting with a married man? Nope. My friend told me he was single. Just off limits. She literally wouldn't say why. This was weird. I asked her if she had feelings for him. She was living with her BF at the time, but they were having issues, and I thought maybe she was sorting through a weird crush on his friend. She insisted that no, she had no feelings for him whatsoever, but then proceeded to say she'd rather I F her boyfriend than the friend I'd been talking to all night. Super weird. I told her I loved her a lot, but this request was not normal, and I really needed more information. She gave me some long explanation that amounted to "because I said so," and then told me I had to go tell him I'm not interested and never contact him again. I told her that she'd have to either give me a great reason or just go tell the guy herself that she was forbidding us from getting to know each other. She told me just do it. I was upset, but she was my best friend of 15 years. So I went downstairs and told the guy our mutual friend didn't want us talking anymore. He was upset, but we both agreed to just sort of give it a minute and see if she was maybe just emotional or drunk or something. Then for the next few weeks she proceeded to lie to both of our faces about each other, told me terrible things about him, told him awful things about me, and trash talk us to anyone who would listen, while to our faces pretending to be our best friend who'd saved us from the terrible fate of dating each other. Eventually she overplayed her hand though. We figured out what was going on, got together to compare notes. It had all gotten just really insane and extreme on her end. She immediately blocked and ghosted me while texting him nice little "we miss you" messages. The "we" included her BF and acting like he'd done nothing wrong and I was Satan. Ironic, because I'd been willing to forgive her while he'd already gone emotional scorched earth and would have spit in her face. Losing my friendship with her was the most painful breakup I've been through. It took me a while to move on, but I did, and I ended up staying with and getting engaged to the guy she went psycho about me seeing, so it was ultimately worth it. Over the years I've heard things here and there from mutual friends about her being upset about us being together, and had a handful of limited interactions. One on Christmas, once after she broke up with her BF and called my husband, so he handed me the phone to answer and she pretended she'd meant to call me, which betrayed that she was still not happy about us, but nothing serious. Fast forward to our big wedding day. The priest is doing his thing, asks if anyone has any objections. Our old mutual friend stands up and is immediately sobbing out an incoherent objection. She wasn't invited. She'd stalked us and bribed a guest to be there +1. Said guest had no idea of the situation and thought she was just an old friend who I'd be happy to see. The guest she'd come with is trying to pull her back down to her seat, but she scuttled away from him and was just standing in the aisle, sobbing and stammering about how we met at her house and how she shouldn't have invited us to the party. I think it wasn't very eloquent. We didn't have security. No one really knew what to do. The priest is like totally shocked, mouth gaping open. My brothers and Syl are like hands on their heads grimacing and clearly trying to think of some solution. My dad has stepped out and already called the cops. So, she's just standing there screaming at us and sobbing. She manages to get out a coherent question aimed at my husband, and I'm paraphrasing for brevity and memory's sake. Why not me? Why didn't you like me? You ignored me for 2 years and you wouldn't acknowledge anything I did to try to get your attention. Then you always said you were too damaged, and I thought that must be the problem, and I was going to wait. But you two met, and it's just right away together forever. Why? What's wrong with you? What the hell? My husband, in his autistic glory, replied, I mean, I never liked your face and your voice is grating, and you're not that smart. I just liked hanging out with her ex, so I figured I had to be nice to ya, but this is weird now. I mean, yeah, I think you're ugly and boring to me. Did you invite her? You didn't, right? I said no, and you weren't invited, so yeah, definitely you should leave. Everyone sort of grumbled and gasped, and expressed general shock / amusement / cringe. My oldest brother looked like he wanted to teleport into the Sunday. She'd been crying and babbling non-stop the whole time. I tried to speak a couple times, but she just shrieked at me. My brother, the one who would rather be launched into space, went over and grabbed her at that point, and dragged her out by the arm like a toddler. He later told me he would rather get assault charges than be in that situation any longer. My husband and I were asked if we'd like a minute. We took a minute in a weird little back room and just sort of went holy sh, right? Like holy sh, you good? Okay, well we gotta get back out there, but oh my god. Then we all just sort of moved on and finished the damn thing up. Jokes were made, some people took video and that got passed around a lot. Ex-friend actually called me ask that I make people stop us if I'd control that. Honestly, my dad was more upset about it than we were.